And one of the girls turned to me and was like, "Oh Jesus Christ, at least we won't have the drama of selection." Because honestly, it's the worst part of it. It is like you have to take the positives with the bad as well. Like Six Nations may be cancelled, but it's like, oh thank God we won't have selection issues anymore. Because it's the worst part. Like you lose sleep over it, and like that, Ian. The two teams are divided up like the day before. A training at the final training session on a Sunday. You look at the two teams and you're trying to see,
Oh,
okay, so juniors on that team, which means they're definitely the starters, and you're like, oh no, but this one's over here, so because they're never going to leave our captain off the team, so you're like, oh my God, I'm not on juniors team, I'm not starting, and it's like the mind games that go on, like the computer. There, your example is just it's comical and people are like you're crazy, and I think it sometimes it makes you a bit crazy. So Darren, I envy you sometimes that you don't have to worry about that.
yeah, and you'd see on the Monday when one of the coaches would hand out, "Oh, Mads, you chuck on a bib there. He
Yeah.
chucks on a bib," and then you would be like, "Has Pinar got a bib?" We're like, it was one of those ones, like, but
Oh, it's
and
grown
even like,
man. Like that stuff is just bonkers.
and
Like,
it's pathetic, and
yeah,
but
it's like
again,
schoolyard stuff. Picking a team. It's like
Yeah.
the old schoolyard and the two lads picking the team or the two girls picking the team, and you're the last one to be picked. It's the exact same thing, except for bloody grown men and grown women dealing with it.
and I suppose it's just like I find it a lot easier to deal. I think I was on the end of a couple of rough selections in my international career, but like, weren't we all? And but I was very sort of at peace with my exit from international rugby from sort of 2015 onwards, because I thought Jared Payne was brilliant. I thought Robbie Henshaw was brilliant. I thought that I could see. I was looking, and I was like, as Gary Ringrose was coming through, I was like, this guy's a phenomenal player. He's young, like he's got all ahead of him. Um, and but I didn't see that at Ulster, and that made it tougher. And then like Tommy Bowe and I always used to joke. We played an A game in Naas against Munster. It was in April of the 2015-16 season, but in the September, we both started for Ireland at Mads. You remember the game? It was either against the All Blacks or Romania, but it was at Wembley in the World Cup. I forget which one team it was
Yeah.
against. And 90,000 people, Rugby World Cup at Wembley. And then like me and Tommy are running out at Naas, and I always said when I get approached to write a book, it's going to be called From Wembley to Naas, because I don't know how I did it. I remember, Les Kiss being like, "Oh, in fairness, I think I was coming back from injury, but still, I remember him saying like, I think I'd like you to captain the A's this week," and I just thought, "Oh, for that." If you look up poison chalice in the dictionary, and I remember running out to the game, and I don't know if one person clapped. Never mind, 90,000 people roared, and we belted out the Irish anthem. So anyway, I don't have to deal with that anymore. So I'm loving it.
Some news during the week was that Paul O'Connell was announced as the forwards coach for the Irish team. Both of you would have played with Paul. Um, what type of a character is he to first off play with? We'll talk about his coaching style and what he will do to the Irish squad in a second. But what was he like, Darren? Have you got any stories about Paul playing with him?
Apologies to anyone who's listening to this podcast looking like something real juicy, but like, unfortunately for me, it's the party line. I absolutely love the guy. I think the sun shines out of his arse. I just think he's an absolute like national treasure. Um, I remember actually at the World Cup when the first week, Robbie Henshaw got injured in training, and I was probably the only person at the World Cup who was actually an out and out centre. Yet I managed to not get picked. Only I could do that because all the lads were playing fullback and stuff at that stage. And I remember Luke got picked to play at 12 in the first game because Robbie had dropped out, and it was a wee bit of a surprise. Um, and I remember Paulie pulled me to one side when we arrived in Cardiff and was like, "Look, Darren, I thought you were going to get picked. I'm not sure why you haven't, but if you're going to win a World Cup or be successful, we need 31 guys. We're not even here, and we can't have something festering. Like, keep your head down. You will get opportunities. You will play." And I remember thinking, flip, this guy, like, it was the most irrelevant thing to what he was preparing for. He was preparing to captain his country in a World Cup. So Luke Fitzgerald and Darren Cave in the centre, like I was surprised he even noticed. For him to take the time and pull me to one side. Do you know, I always remember thinking, flip, like that just shows the mark of the man. Um, even in many ways, Mads, like it was such a cruel way for him to go, but actually his injury. But part of me thinks this is going to sound weird. It was almost quite fitting as well that the last like memory I have of this guy playing rugby is with a ruptured hamstring, trying to get back in the defensive line. I
Yeah.
remember vividly, and to me, like what a cruel way to go, but also like what a good way to go. Is there a more like
Okay.
this guy has ruptured the hamstring off the bone, and he's trying to get up in the defensive line because he knows that the team is more important than him. So I always thought, you know, he wouldn't have chosen to go that way, but it really does show the mark of the man.
Yeah, certainly. Like I think it's well described. You know what a player he was, what a leader he was. And we were lucky enough to share a change room with him, and some of his talks the day before, the day before taking the field, they're just incredible. And I remember, obviously, we were younger guys at the time. I remember thinking, Jesus, this is unbelievable. I wonder if every captain speech like this, and obviously they're not. Everyone's got their different styles, but his were just so captivating. You could hear a pin drop. And then, the way he played, he always led the defensive line, led the line out. He was, ferocious in the mauls. But I think that something that people don't realize is the kind of softer side to Paulie. Like we see glimpses of it, who's on the late late or he's, doing commentary. You see glimmers of his humor, but like he's genuinely a really, really funny guy. And his ability to switch on for training and games, obviously he puts everything into that, but is also his ability to switch off and connect with all the players and coaches, and see the softer side to him and knock a bit of fun out of the day. I think that's actually going to be huge for the Irish squad because they are under a bit of pressure at the moment. The Autumn Nations Cup went okay. It's didn't go amazingly well, but finished off with a decent game against Scotland. Him coming in and being a breath of fresh air around the players, around the coaches, I think that's going to be a massive lift aside from the actual rugby nous that he's going to bring to the table.
Absolutely, yeah. And look, as we saw, the set piece got a lot of slating in the Autumn Nations. So hopefully he can do something with that set piece. And I'm sure the players will really, really respond to somebody like him as well. Like a lot of those guys would have grown up, looking up to someone like Paul O'Connell. So I think we're all looking forward to a better set piece in the new year, hopefully, if this Guinness Six Nations goes ahead. Darren, we could stay talking to you all day, but we have to get to our Guinness House of Rugby Hall of Fame. We asked you, all our listeners, to name some uncapped Irish players that you feel have earned a call up to Andy Farrell's squad ahead of the Guinness Six Nations. This one got a huge response. We had loads of responses to this one. There were a lot of mentions for Gavin Casey, Tom O'Toole, Ben Healy, Ryan Baird and Harry Byrne, even a couple of Tom Daly shout-outs, but a lot of you want to see Munster back row. I'm pretty happy with this one. Gavin Coombs in here. Our Hall of Fame entry, though, is Ulster fan Richard Dawson, who put provincial bias aside to say he'd love to see Gavin Coombs involved. Welcome to the Hall of Fame, Richard. So, I suppose really quickly, Ian, who do you think, what young players have you been really impressed with? Name two or three, or whoever you think, that might be in with, a chance of that extended panel.
Yeah, well, obviously, like guys who've played that are coming back but are still young, like the likes of Hugo Keenan and Larmer at the weekend. I thought they showed that they have every reason for being in there again, and it's more, I think, a question of where Hugo's going to play now. Whether it's going to be on the wing or at fullback. And I think Jordan's probably a shoe in. He looked pretty sharp, I thought, against Ulster. For us up in Ulster, I think James Hume is someone who's been playing really well in the midfield. There's a lot of real quality midfielders. We spoke about Tom Farrell last week, and then obviously we've the frontline guys, the likes of Bundy, Shoe, um, Robbie, obviously, Chris Farrell. So, it's very competitive, but he's definitely someone who's shown glimpses that he is up to international standards. Mike Lowry is another guy who definitely offers something a bit different. I know he's one of the smaller guys who's out there playing professionally, but his footwork is something that we've seen the likes of Colby and stuff like that. And he's someone who, the more he plays, he's going to keep putting his hand up. And I'd say he's definitely on the international coaches'
Yeah.
radar. So
I agree. He was phenomenal in the air last week as well. For someone of his height, you know, and in challenging conditions, really good contestable kicks. He was so solid underneath those kicks.
Emer, will
Yeah.
you and Ian stop talking about Ulster, please?
Darren,
Emer,
tell me about you now. Who do you think is going to
I have a changing room to go into tomorrow. Another
Emer,
23 lads I want to get through here.
Emer, thank you for asking. There's a young chap called Ian Madigan who's ticking all sorts of boxes. No, listen, actually delighted that you asked me because it's a very competitive position. Look, Ireland at the minute, I don't think they have a Scooby-Doo what their best team is, same as Ulster actually, but they've loads of players. So a lot of it's hard to get in the group at the minute, I think. But Craig Casey, for me, is a guy who's like, I know he's behind Conor Murray, and I know there's loads of nines in Ireland, but he was really impressive against Ulster, and he has been throughout the season so far. And then the other one at Munster who I was quite impressed with, who I hadn't seen a lot of, was Wycherley in the second row. So again, with the Ireland squad, there's loads of depth, but they're two guys that I expect to see, if not this Six Nations, in the foreseeable future.
House of Rugby Ireland, here on Joe, together with Guinness. Game changed.